So I will just do a quick run of all the presenters so that you can know us. And the session is about embedded automation, so especially AARI. And also at the end, we'll show APIs, so how APIs can work in the context of AARI, but also in other contexts. So we have Emilia Dvorak from Cloudera, which can maybe present yourself just after, because I want to spoil. you have your own introduction. Aziz Khan from the product team, which also will introduce, and Geoffrey Lesses from also the product team. Aziz working especially on the API, which is game-changing feature, and I'm working on AARI especially. Can start with you on the different slides. So robotic process automation at Cloudera with a good focus on AARI.
Yes, welcome everyone. My name is Emilia, and I am the manager of RPA Center of Excellence in Cloudera. And today I want to talk to you about how we embedded automation in our company. So a few words about myself. So I have 10 plus years of experience in the industry. I was working in the teams dealing with network migrations. I was the leader of service support team. And of course, now I'm involved in automation and robotic process automation. My journey with RPA, it started 5 years ago. And when I initially started, it was mainly on these on-prem installed applications. I started as Automation Anywhere developer, and now I'm managing the team in Cloudera, which was a different challenge, let's say, because of the environment and application landscape that I will walk you through in a moment. And speaking of Cloudera, so just a few words about our company. Cloudera is a company that delivers analytics and machine learning capabilities. It was founded in 2008, and in 2019 it merged with Hortonworks. As you can imagine from the name, it's actually cloud company. So firstly, it makes sense that Cloudera uses cloud RPA application. But secondly, for me as a developer, it also changed the way I'm thinking about RPA design. Because there are just different requirements where you have a company with on-prem installations, and then different requirement when you have user just going from one tab of Chrome to another instead of one application to another. So that definitely affected my RPA journey. If you look here at this slide, that's my beginnings of RPA. So these are all these unattended bots that are scheduled, download the report, and process everything that is currently in the queue, the open tickets, some kind of cases that are open in the system. It was mostly on-prem. If you think about provisioning bot user, how we would use to provision user, firstly install all the applications that the user uses, right? So you install app 1, app 2, app 3. And then when you develop it, so okay, so open the application, click here, click there. That worked fine before with these desktop applications, unattended automations. And then I moved to Cloudera. And again, the day at Cloudera looks a bit different. You don't open all these applications. Basically, you can complete the whole process by just opening your Chrome browser. And you move from one tab to another tab to another tab. So that actually started a question, how do you automate in a company like that? Of course, as I mentioned before, with RPA Cloud Tool, which is Automation Anywhere. But secondly, it turned out that the design and the architecture that worked fine before may need some tweaking. So mainly, we're talking about these APIs, that sometimes all these web applications, if you have API endpoint, it's just so easy to send API call, make an update, make a query, change this data, or actually just query, return me every open ticket that is assigned to the bot, right? And it's just immediate. So definitely it was something that we wanted to incorporate. On the other hand, there are still some situations where you would choose to record the human clicks with user interface, but definitely adding API was one of the main factors that changed for my RPA journey. And another part was that in Cloudera, our bots needed to be a bit more flexible, right? So these unattended automations that I used to develop, delivered, they worked fine, right? But then we had business coming to us and saying, actually, we want this run on demand. We want this run with different parameters. So definitely that was something that we needed to incorporate in our RPA architecture. And we started thinking about what is the best way to deliver efficient automations in Cloudera. And we had finance team coming to us with some month-end candidates. And the first question that you can ask to the finance is actually, what is month-end? And it's not an easy answer, because it turns out that month-end is different for everyone else. Like, one person will tell me month-end is the last calendar of the month. And that's what probably I would think before as well. Another person will come and tell me, actually, it's the last business day of the month. And surprise, surprise, there are teams that will tell me, well, no, month-end is the 5th day of the following month, right? So yeah, I can see that people understand this topic. So yeah, that's a question. So how do we deliver it? How do we run the bot? And we had some workarounds. So on one hand, we had like a flag system. So okay, open this file and tell to the bot when it should start, right? Tell, yes, that's now the moment to start. We will schedule this automation every half an hour just to check. And that's fine, that works. It's just like it's extra 30 minutes for the business to wait for it. If you have 9 p.m. on month end and the business wants, like, it's 5 minutes past 9, they would need to wait till 9:30. Another thing is how we code it for that. Because even if I start the bot, so of course I need month end report. Okay, so what does it mean? So if I run it on 25th of August, I need report for August. If I run it on 30th of August, I need report for August. If I run it on 5th of September, I need report for August. And then the question, if I run it on 15th of August, I don't really know. Is it August? Is it July? So basically, that was one of the additional challenges we would add to the code, telling the bot, look, if it's approximately 10 days before, 10 days after, just use this month that is before. And then again, it worked. But the code itself was, you need all this logic added and analyzes. And then again, the question is, what if we have 15th, middle of the month, and someone runs it, right? And another part is that sometimes with business required these automations of processes where parameters would change. For instance, we read emails to gather information about all the notifications received. Just immediately, the business wants to see summary. How many errors, how many exceptions, what kind of queries were received. And then the question is, what's the timeline? So I would go to business and say, look, we can do it for the last 30 days. No, that doesn't work for us. I will want it for last 30 days. My manager may want it from 1st till 15th. So again, this flexibility of the input was something that we needed to incorporate. And of course, need for this on-demand automation. I really like the unattended, that every day, every hour, the bot just clears the queue. It's just that it's not always business requirement. Sometimes business requirement is to run it now when I need it, at the hour that I need it. And the last point is this empowerment of the business, that in all of this, how we developed before, we, of course, took into account business needs. It's just that we were there involved. We were there including this in the code. We were there telling to the, being actually business would raise a ticket to tell us when they need to run it, so we would run it. And again, was that needed? Probably not. You want to remove this additional point of contact. You want basically business own their automation and talk to the bot directly. And that is why we decided to add AARI to our design. With AARI, we created customized form. A customized form that each team has its own form. Each team can put all the parameters they need, because for me, for instance, it may be the name of the month that I need the report for. For someone else, it needs to be the dates of the report. Maybe someone wants to have flexible output location. So, okay, in my form, I want to actually specify where this file, the output is going, or actually even where is the input. And with this form, the automation can be started directly by the business user. They just open the link of AARI, they find the form, and they click, and the bot starts immediately. So there's no waiting time. There is no RPA COE team that, we may be on a meeting. It may be after business hours for us. So if we have someone urgently needing this report to be generated, well, you don't have to raise ticket with us anymore. You just have to, just open the link and click, and your automation will start. I'd say that had a huge impact on both COE, Center of Excellence, and business. So a few points how it changed our team. Firstly, it's all secure with access and controls. So it's not that all the users get just the access to the same AARI. You see in AARI only what you should see. So if you have finance team, they will only see their own forms. If you have sales team will only see their forms, and so on. On the other hand, this gave also flexibility to work on a bit more unstructured data. Because what if the trigger for your monthly report is actually someone pinging you and saying, look, I need this report with these dates, right? Again, it's fine for us humans, but the bot needs a bit more specific information. And that's the thing you put in the form. And actually, the user is requested then to translate it into bot's language. And then, of course, for us, the code is cleaner. We have the AARI form, we have the AARI process, but the whole steps is actually, there is no more like just erase this 20 lines of code that tell the bot what is month end, which, again, isn't such an easy answer. On the other hand, how it impacted the business. So you can probably visualize how it changes your user experience. If you can now own this automation, if you can start it whenever you need it with the parameters you want. So definitely they got their on-demand automations. There is RPA COE is not involved. They can have these flexible inputs. So what's my input? Well, my input this week will be in this folder, but another week may be in a different one. And that's fine, because we included in the design. And yeah, there is no need, again, to wait for RPA COE, which just basically cuts the processing time. And again, people involved in finance and month-end processes know that half an hour at month-end is actually a lot. So half an hour, we cut this half an hour delay for the bot to wait for the schedule, which again, it's just improved our automation greatly. Just about the future of RPA COE in Cloudera, it's like what's next for us, and I think every company that incorporated RPA will say the same. We want more, right? We want to be able to automate even more processes, and like on the slide you can see this swivel chair processes go from, well, here it's like up 1, up 2, up 3, but let me remind you, we're talking cloud environment, so it's really more like tab 1, tab 2, tab 3. I already told you the journey, how we improved our user experience, how automation runs became more flexible, more on demand, but to be honest, we want more. And I'm looking forward for the second part of this panel when we'll see from Automation Anywhere what new features they brought, which I think will be even more helpful, like if you could trigger the bot from any application or any tab in cloud environment. And from my side, just a few key takeaways. So just thinking about RPA in your company, well, firstly, do more. Like have a look what new features are available in the tool. AARI was one of those things that before, as I said, like we would be thinking about the design, like adjusting and so on, and then AARI came and basically solved a few of these questions. Second point is to empower business. I think if business users own their automations, it's not only better for your RPA COE team that they don't have to be involved, but it's just a different experience for business users. And that means actually better automations. They're closer to their automations. They get more from their automations. And when that, I think I've heard also on other panel, the process first. So when you're talking with your business and they're coming to you with some candidate, listen, get as many details as like available, basically. Every possible click and decision and business exception, hold on with the solutioning, right? Wait for the solutioning after the part that you have already this process defined, that you feel comfortable, that you understand it. Because when you go straight into solutioning, you may be actually limiting yourself. Because even with this case, like business comes with month end, and I'll tell them, yeah, we'll include that in the code. This other part, you will have to use the flag, yes or no. Instead, yeah, like listen and then try to find the best possible design. And the last point would be this, also don't limit yourself, like mix and match. The fact that AARI worked for month-end processes is great, but don't be afraid also of using these unattended automations. So like, again, attended and unattended, depending on the process. And the same with the design and development. It's like, it doesn't have to be API. APIs are great if they are available, but sometimes you will have vendor who tell you, look, we don't have these endpoints, we're working on them, this will be next year. That doesn't have to stop you. Remember, with RPA, you have the choice. Go this front-end automation with mimicking user clicks, or go with APIs and backend. And with that, I think I'll pass to Jeffrey to hear more about what's coming from Automation Anywhere side.
Thank you. I'll just take the clicker. Okay. So thank you, Emilia. It was very insightful.
Thank you, everyone.
I saw a lot of heads nodding, so I think you were on point. And that's, I like your story, just a few words. I like your story because you started from the ground, from the unattended side. And a lot of us started from there. I used to implement RPA before at a bank, before joining Automation Anywhere. And we started with unattended. We started with our schedule. And I was in a room with a customer yesterday talking about schedule and introducing, hey, on demand, introducing AARI, introducing that empower business to schedule is just a solution for having the bot at the right time, but let the users do it. So really like the story because it's all the way to from unattended to using attended or using AARI. So I like that. And actually just wanted to re-emphasize some of our core automation success platform and what we're doing. So AARI is very sitting on the top. It's the way to access automation. It's the way to touch your users, the way to empower them. And it's very at the top of the foundational blocks. Foundational blocks are all the intelligent apps. So you're, for example, Cloudera using RPA. Maybe at some point you're using document automation, process discovery to also find the use cases. It's a good way also to listen to your users is to look at the process discovery outputs and look at how they went through the use case in multiple variations, multiple fashions. All the measuring and scaling. So, and obviously, being a cloud company, we're also kind of a match made in heaven with Cloudera because cloud vendor for RPA, automating cloud vendors in the cloud industry. So it's a very compelling story, and that's why we shifted to cloud. It is for that kind of stories, and because we're seeing the shift to more web app, to more Chrome, to more cloud. Having said that, we saw also a shift in how AARI is used. We've come a long way of customer feedback, especially feedback from Cloudera, for example, is you have your business users, they used to have a lot of desktops, so they were alt-tabbing their way through the desktop. Now they have one Chrome extension, one Chrome browser open, sorry for the mistake. They have one Chrome browser open, and they have multiple tabs, and they're now navigating through the different tabs. And that was our journey. We started AARI as HBC on the V11, which was a desktop app. Then we switched to AARI, which is a web app. But still, we're still one app between the others. People will still have to find us. So we've done the other way around. We say, let's find the users where they are. So if they're in Salesforce, AARI is in the Salesforce. If they're in SAP, we are in SAP. If they're just hanging out on LinkedIn on their Chrome browser, we also can find them, and AARI can be here. Or I said LinkedIn, I could have said Facebook, but I mean, it's just, yeah, just. So that's actually what we built, and that's what we presented today and yesterday. embedding AARI, embedding the automation within the application of choice. We have multiple flavors of automation that can be used with that. Attended automation, unattended automation. Is local? Is it remote? Is it using document automation to process documents? We can do all the flavors, and then you go back to your users and say, hey, there's a task pending, is there an exception? Or your report is done, is finished, is ready. And also working with notifications to notify them where they are. So that's really where we want to go and where we're going, touching the users where they are. And that was a closing slide for the demo, but actually the demo is not here. Just a few words that we are now releasing. So a Genesis integration. So for those of you who are of Genesis, we're integrating natively into Genesis. All the iPass integration, which my friend and colleague will talk about. A web extension and a widget. So basically, we did not let ourselves blocked by technology on AARI. So embedding everywhere means that if you have any web application, we can be here. It means if you have the skill set, the people, or the access to the application, for example, you have Salesforce, you have ServiceNow, you know how to customize it. You can add AARI as technically as an iframe, just as a web page or a web component, which will be inside ServiceNow, inside Salesforce, inside even your homegrown application if you have it. So that's one way. But we know that as a COE team, sometimes you don't have the access, you don't have the leverage. Sometimes you go to your IT and say, oh, it's 1 year from now to add that. So we have a solution. We have a Chrome extension as well. So you can be in Chrome and you can open AARI from anywhere. And we're also responsive to the page where you are. If you're in SAP, we'll always show the application or the automation which are pertinent to SAP. So that's thanks to a partnership we had, and we're excited about that because it's universal. It's the universal remote. Regardless of the TV, you can just play around. Now, we'll switch to the API and the story because just a segue. Embedding automation is we're empowering the users. And business users, when they have touching automation in their application, they don't want to see waiting time. They want to see loading time. They want everything to be lightning fast, lightning responsive. So responsiveness for us is also API. That's one way, and we think it's one way. The future is one way to automate very fast. It's a millisecond, and we want the user experience, the employee experience to be at the millisecond. So that's why we're raising API as well. It's working hand in hand with AARI because that's what's driving the success of AARI.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeffrey. I can see the slides back, so I may have to move up. There's a lot of innovations that we're bringing to the table as we roll into .27, .28 around APIs. So Jeffrey talked about the fact, and Emilia, you also talked about the fact that when you build automations, you not only deal with bots, but you deal with human workers who are intervening, and you need APIs to deal with transactions at very high speeds, right? So when you're interacting with cloud applications, whether it's a Salesforce, a ServiceNow, Workday, or any other cloud application, API is often the best way to integrate because those applications often change frequently, and the interactions need to be high speed in a lot of those cases. So take an example of a call center agent. If the call center agent is using an automation to interact with a cloud application to get data back, to respond to a customer who's calling you, you don't want to necessarily wait 2 minutes for that bot to come back to you. You want that response to be instantaneous. So we're talking about response times in milliseconds. And that's what API, as a first-class citizen, will bring you with automation success platform. So API task, you've seen some of this in our keynotes, right? You should be able to create them very easily within the bot editor. You should be able to use it in the context of a process that you're building within AARI. You should be able to use it in the context of a form that you create. And all of those will make it very efficient for you to use in that context. The key thing here is, again, Jeffrey pointed this out, is response time. And how do we deal with that? So today, when you use, how many of you use API today in your automations, in your Well, a number of you do, right? So what do? You use a REST package. You create an automation with a REST package. REST package makes an API call to the third-party service. That automation, when you execute it, it gets deployed to your bot agent device. And that bot agent then makes that API call to the third-party service. All of that stuff, all those steps that we talked about, takes time. There are latencies built into that because you're initializing the service, you're deploying the code to the local device, and all of that. So what we have done architecturally is change that whole application architecture by creating devices that actually sit in the cloud that are pre-initialized, pre-warmed, ready to go. So as soon as you execute the automation on your control room, that bot is already running, fetching the data for you and coming back. So what you're dealing with is, at the end of the day, the latency that third-party service actually takes to execute the call. So with that, you're going to get fast response times, so whether it's in the contact center, whether it's inside of a form that you're doing dynamic data lookups, or within a process that requires very fast response times, you'll be able to do your process in a much more efficient way. So that's the net of what API as a service will bring you. Now, aside from what I'm going to show you, we've also done a number of different integrations that you probably saw in the keynote with iPaaS vendors, right? Starting with MuleSoft, with Apigee, with Boomi, and Workato, and a number of others. And these integrations essentially will also give you the ability to sort of make API calls to those integrations and consume those. In a number of cases, you'll find out that your IT organization has already built a number of assets, API assets, that they used those API platforms for. This gives you the ability to sort of discover those elements and actually use them in the context of the automation that you're building in A360. Oops, I think I forgot to transition my slide. Okay, so I kind of covered this, API task, what you use it for, right? So it runs in the cloud to integrate with any SaaS application, any API endpoint. You can create the task just like you create a bot within the automation success platform, and then you use it in process as well as in forms. Key thing is, again, fast execution times, very different from the way that bot runs in the platform today, architecturally different. And it's designed for your traditional automation developers. You don't have to go and find a Java developer to go and build this API automation. You use the same tools, the same platform to build it, just like you build a bot today. So nothing changes there for you. So how do you create it, right? We kept this very simple. You will see that you'll find now an API bot command on your menu. Just like you create a regular task bot, you click on the API bot, create API bot action, and then you can start the journey of creating it. What happens then is that this API bot that you're creating gets saved as a different MIME type in the repository. So the system will know that this is a different kind of a bot. It executes differently than your normal bot in terms of deployment architecture. So once you save it, this is now an object that's available for you to consume from within your process orchestrator, process composer rather, or the form that you create in AARI. Building this is very simple. As I was telling you earlier, we kept the same development environment. So just like you build an automation with a REST package or your SAP package, you drag and drop your commands into the workbench, and then you configure the system very easily. The properties are very easily understood here. Number of predefined packages already exist in the platform. You're going to be able to consume them directly. If you're using the SAP BAPI package, for example, this will work in this particular framework. We just released a Salesforce package with .26. You'll be able to use that here. We are also coming up with one for Workday and one for ServiceNow in the upcoming releases. So all of those packages will be available. The key difference here is that the list of commands that you see on the left-hand side are going to be very specific to applications that you integrate with APIs only, right? So you're not going to see your Excel package or other things that don't work the same way. This makes it very efficient for you, so no learning. And again, you create it very easily. Once you have created that, now it becomes available to you for use within the context of building your AARI process. So just like you drag and drop a task bot, a human action, into your palette, you now have the option to bring an API task. So once you drag that API task into your RE process, you now have the opportunity to select which API bot you created in the repository that you want to use. We filtered that list down, so you're only looking at API bots that you created, right? So this makes it very simple for you, so you're not going to make mistakes and choose a regular bot. And once that's there, you make the configuration changes, adjustments, and off you go. Your process is there, ready to execute. In the case of forms, this is new. You didn't have the ability to call an API before. So now, instead of static values in a form, you can also set it up so that it can actually make an API call and get dynamic data for you, right? So in this particular example, let's say your customer calls you and you're trying to find out what is the list of assets that they have maybe insured with me, right? So you plug in their policy number, and as soon as you click down, an API call gets made behind the scenes to look that data up, present it to you in real time.
Are you actually abstracting the credentials inside of this cloud API call?
Yeah, so when you create the actual logic inside the bot editor that I showed you earlier, that's where you kind of define the configuration for your authentication, all of that. Yeah, so the form developer doesn't have to worry about any of that. So this is more like a citizen developer picking a bot that's already been created, and it's working magic behind the scenes, right? So now you can essentially call any API from within a form, right? So if you want to look up the stock quotes for today, that API gets called, and you will see the list of values. So I think that's, in a nutshell, what you will see in the upcoming releases. In version 27, which is coming up later this year, you're going to see a preview. So if you're interested in becoming an early adopter, I encourage you to reach out to us. We'll work with you, what's that, white glove treatment? Work with you to make sure that you're able to use it. And it becomes generally available in version 28, when everybody is going to get access to it. So how exciting is this, guys? You like it?
Yes.
Awesome. So, we'll all take questions. I think we still have a few more minutes.
Oh, wait.
What takes so long? His question was, what takes us so long to do this? It's a great question, right?
He's our boss.
I think true innovation happens in stages.
Let's talk about resourcing. Any questions?
Yes, so I'm feverishly texting with my team, like, are we using this? Are we using that? So what would you guys guide us with our existing bot army to go back and see, how do we optimize using this new features? What's the criteria? Like we have Microsoft 365, we have Workday, we have ServiceNow, a lot of these applications, business applications that you shared. What would be our next 2 steps that we would take? Because this is amazing.
I can maybe take this one.
Sure, go ahead.
I think there are 2 things. After looking at it, there's 2 steps. The first one is effectively to reassess all the existing bot real estate you have and look at it and say, okay, do I really need this schedule? Is it on demand? What exactly the business wanted at the first place 2 years ago when we started the project? And maybe we reduce some of the expectations and some of the outcomes because of the solution at the time. So reassessing the existing bots, but I would say reassessing the existing bots is a long-term goal because you already have production and critical missions which are relying on those bots. I think the second step, which is also exciting, is to look at the pipeline where you can make an impact easier because you can look at what's coming next and what are the current business and processes and look at them with this new lens of, is there human inputs? Is there on-demand? Is it where is the flexibility? And oh yeah, we have the APIs, so we can maybe work on the APIs and work on the response time. And I think reassessing the pipeline, I would say, is the first step, which is easier, because it's easier to make an impact. Then reassessing the bots the existing bot could come in a second step where you have maybe, I mean, life cycle of a bot is never done. It's always iterating. So maybe by small iteration, you can add. I would recommend starting with the user inputs because it's easy to plug a form and to plug a bot to a process and start from there if you have existing schedules. It's something we've done for a lot of customers. It's easy to do. It's quite seamless. Then moving to APIs, obviously you've done a bot for a good reason, so moving to APIs is the other step. We'll start by the inputs, start by the users, and then go to the API.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Good idea. The only thing I would add is that one of the key things that we thought about here is how do we make this simple for you, right? So that if you've already built an automation that uses ServiceNow, or not ServiceNow, but an existing package, like an Office 365, right? You don't have to recode that, right? When you upgrade to the new release, you should be able to use that same automation in the context of API as a service, right? So that's what will give you some scale from that perspective.
Yeah, this is still the same editor, so you can do Control-C, Control-V, and you will get you will get it done on the API.
Save it as an API bot,
API,
yes.
Yeah.
As you scale these forms and user-based actions, how do you manage capacity, like with bots, and you're having it across all these different applications potentially, and it's triggering on demand, like real time?
I will take this one and maybe ask Emilia how she's doing also. We have different ways of, so for each, we have two concepts, I would say. We have the concept of a team, for where you group your users. We have a concept of a device pool, where you group your devices. It's like who's asking and who's responding. We have different ways of mapping and intelligently mapping between who's requesting and who is actually doing the work. So you could, for example, say for the finance team, we only go to the finance resources, finance devices. For maybe you can say, oh, just for this HR onboarding process, we just use these HR devices or HR licenses. For example, we have restaurants, like a well-known burger restaurants, which is using that technology to say, if the San Francisco restaurant is asking for this report, we're actually running it on the San Francisco device in the restaurant. And we're mapping that. It's still going to the same control room, which is centrally served, but we're doing this mapping. And if this is a New York team, we go to the New York device. So that's elegantly mapping the resources. I would say that's how the pipeline and how the pipes are doing. There's obviously a question of scaling and sizing, and that we can always help. We have some calculation to help. To say, for example, you have 100 users, there will likely be 10 or 15 concurrent requests at the same time. The bot is taking about a minute to do, and we can infer from that the correct size of the devices and the licenses. It's always an iterating process, but we can give a pretty accurate ballpark of devices to start and licenses to start. Want to add something on that? How you're managing your bot real estate versus your business?
Yeah, more or less the same actually, using the device pools. And just one thing to add here is that if you start switching from this UI to API, it's actually much faster. You don't need as many resources as you used to. So this makes it easier as well.
Yeah, a lot of those issues goes away with APIs.
Yeah.
Because there's just one device which is processing millions of transactions. So it's different. How you're looking at resourcing is different.
And you'll also have flexibility in sort of defining your device pool for API, right? You'll say that, I will dedicate these 10 devices specifically for this automation. So it's always available when you need it. Yeah.
And for cloud, we want to take care of all that. And for cloud customers, just hey, click on a button, it's done. Okay, one more question.
Yeah, I had two questions, one on APIs and one on RE.
Sure.
So for the APIs, it's really excited about like this feature. So how do you surface all the APIs which might be available in disparate platforms? So we have MuleSoft, we have SAP PO.
Yeah.
So how is it that you would surface that on RE, and then how would that business user
Great
even
question.
know how to, what
So
the
we
API needs and all of that?
Yeah, great question. So we started on that journey, right? So I think one of the things you probably saw in one of the keynote demos is that you can do discovery of APIs. So we have that solution with 8.26 with Apigee. So you can connect to an Apigee instance and discover integrations that have been already created by your IT teams. And you can pull that into your automation plane and build your workflow. We will do the same thing with other vendors as well. So this gives you the ability to sort of look at assets that have already been created, whether it's Apigee, whether it's Boomi, whether it's Workato, and be able to consume them as well within the context of the workflow that you're building.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's great. And the question on RE was, what were like some of the pitfalls or challenges that you should, or the gotchas that you should watch out for when we are executing or implementing an RE implementation?
I'd say, like, honestly, with all automations, just the design, right? Just to meet this business requirements in most efficient way. So sometimes it means that, like, you have a very long process and, well, do you need to really replicate this process like that? Because the users may come to you and may say, that's how I do it, that's what I want. So you may end up with this form that's huge and, well, the thing is, don't be afraid to propose something new. Can we actually cut it? To be honest, again, the users will not know the capabilities, what you have. And like we're talking here API, I don't go to our business users to tell them, look, this can be done API, but in a way you need to find a common language to tell them we can do the same thing with the same output, just in a different way.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I will add to that AARI is competing with Excel, you know, so sometimes more is better for a lot of users. They want a form to look like an Excel spreadsheet with 1,000 of rows and data, and sometimes the process of listening to them is extracting the 2, 3, 4 inputs that they truly care about that will make an impact, that are just the variation. The variables and the parameters are this one, and all the rest is noise. There's a lot of noise somewhere, so AARI is trying to, one pitfall is to not see that there's noise and try to do huge forms with a lot of interactions and chaining a lot of different bots together, while sometimes there was just a happy pass, which was very much simpler. The business user, they start with the unhappy pass, you know? Mm-hmm. They start with, oh, I'm doing that, and then when there's an error, I do that, and there's an exception, I do that. So you're going down the road of the unhappy pass, which is maybe the 2% use cases, and they forget about the 80%, which is, oh, I click there, it's done. Okay, let's start by that. So I would say that's one easy. Yeah, so there's, let's say there's, the easy one to start with is at the start of the process, I give an input and the bot executes and goes back with a response, with an output. The other easy one is just the bot is running for any reason. His schedule is running because he's catching an email and everything. And at some point there's an exception, so he's raising a task. He's saying, oh, I need to ask a user in AARI. I will just send that to the finance team or the San Francisco team. And that may be a good segue to the first question. That's an easy one also. Look at your unattended bots, and they are always throwing an exception and throwing an error, instead of logging that into a text file and asking the IT team to go back the next Sunday to look at it, you can create a request in AARI. You can send a task to the business team so they can mitigate themselves sometimes the business exception. And sometimes not always an IT exception or system exception. It could be just a business exception. And then when you are mastering the front end and the back end, then you can have more complex processes where you have this back and forth and this entire discussion with the users and the bots. I would definitely recommend to start either by a simple, hey, do Mr. Bot do that, or hey, Mr. User, help me from the bot. And then the conversation is maybe step 2 or stage 2 of the journey with AARI. Yeah.
One more question.
Take a question after. There's a demo booth just outside where the demo I wanted to show is there, so I can grab it like an umbrella. You can go all there.
The trip.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.